Hello viewers and subscribers, welcome once again the continuation of the previous screencast. Like I already discussed about the API documentations, REST API documentation with Swagger and OpenAPI version 3. That means the Swagger 2 and Swagger OpenAPI version 1.5.6. And then the previous screencast I discussed how can you deploy the application, the standalone jar file based deployment with the Swagger UI, Swagger UI 2, and also the how can you deploy the application with the Docker and Docker Compose, Docker Compose based deployment with Swagger UI and OpenAPI 3. But today what we am trying to do today, the continuing the same REST API to deploy this application into the Docker and Kubernetes cluster, and then out of this the Docker and Kubernetes cluster we try to document it or generate the Swagger UI, the API documentation and generations with the same API functionalities. And then that means the if you rightly program it like the programming with the REST API documentation, doesn't matter which environment, which technology to deploy your applications. It up to you. It depends. It's really free for you. That means if you design properly your UI configurations, Swagger UI or OpenAPI UI, then you automatically generate your API documents, and then you can professionally export and import those tests with the Postman test, and also those tests can be done by the Swagger UI. If your company is not using the Swagger UI anymore, then you can take also the Postman's test and run export it, this Postman test, and import the Postman testing department, other department. They will run the same tests and as it is. That's I discussed already here. I will discuss together how can you run how can you build these test cases with the Postman, and also the same test cases how can you build the Swagger UI in this proper way. So let's have a look how can we continue the Swagger UI. How can you configure the projects? Then I did the configuration with the Swagger 2, and also with the database migration tool with Flyway. Now we will do the same applications with the liquid-based database migrations, and then do the OpenAPI 3, the Swagger 3 database migrations systems migrations. How can you do it? Database migration tools as a liquid-based database migration tools. So if you see this is the projects that I already discussed the previous, the project structure, community configurations, how can you do, how can you implement, how can you packet it, like this professional packaging structure that I already discussed for the data migration script, and then all the Kubernetes configuration, all things is there properly. Just follow the previous screencast and you get clear idea how can you do, and how can you do all the deployment process externally, not the inside the projects. You can do the externally all the configurations. So you see the project structure, like it has a model structure, it's all the necessary models, it has all the repositories definitions, and also has all the service definition, interface definition, it has the service implementation, everything is there. And it has all the exception handling, some classes, and also it has utility classes. This is already implemented and also discussed the previous screencast. Just follow that one. And today what I try to do the Swagger UI configurations. So we need to really very straightforward the configuration. This is our tag libraries, and this is the configurations. Very straightforward configurations. So you see we have some description files, so the value annotation, those are here new in the Spring Boot and annotation. I had discussed also the previous version how can you annotate to basic annotation, how the meaning and how can you use it, those annotations. So you see we have configurations, the class level annotations. We configure the class, it is generated the OpenAPI bean generations with all the meta information. So you see all the meta informations. And also you can also classify group by the OpenAPI configurations. Then and this is the very straightforward. This is a simple line of code, the configurations, the bean generations, and so on, and then the Spring Boot applications automatically create your REST API documentations and properly. What I mean. So what you need, so this is the configuration, and the pom.xml file you need just like I believe this is the only the API dependency you need here, the open Spring Boot Spring Doc, and then Spring Doc minus OpenAPI.ui and 1.9 the version numbers. The version is independent, which version you are using here, 1.5.9 versions. So just like this, you need the dependency into the POM XML file. After the dependency is there, then you need to the your OpenAPI config files, configuration class, and then its bin will be created automatically, bin injected, and then you have a lot possibility. How can you also group by your API functionalities? Maybe the user role functionalities, the profiles, and user registration functionality. That is defined in here, depending. But since I am really initial description, initial stage of the generations. So then we have the generations, the configurations, and we need to be annotated our controller. So that means we need a pom.xml file dependency injected, and also this is the two properties file we need to be injected, the application.eml files. So we see the Spring.ui enable, so true sets, and application.descriptions, and then application.versions that I am reading. That's the reading I am reading the value from its value annotations and inject the values and here to put it these values. This very straightforward configurations, and set the global properties files, read the properties file, that you changes the values and it's automatically fill the value from the application.eml files. So exactly what we expecting. The controller sections, what you need, just to define the text annotations, and then it has a configuration names, and the configuration we put it like here, the tag names, just what you saw here. You saw the user role services, and this is a role APIs, and then you have a user registration services, and then user registration REST APIs on online. So if you see we define it here, depending how we program it, it's up to you. So it's up to you. You can also make a maps, or it may be some the properties file you can also read from there. But I found one of the way you can also program it like that way. So that's the configuration. You can go this way. So we define all the text and then all the descriptions and all the. So in this case we are using only the simple very two text, or the like 3 models, 3 controllers, and then I put it like here. So it's a user controller, and then we have just started how the add annotation operations, and it has a summary information, it has a description that's we already show in the descriptions, and the description in the description file you already show here the descriptions. So you see the view a list of available register user, update existing register user, and so on and so forth. I try to show you how it works, how you can configure, and how efficiently it is coming very quickly, and how can you understand, how can you do the test, some test cases, and professionally how can build this REST API documentation. That's my initial idea or initial plan to do that one. So that means we annotate each of the functions, but for this case I just started. It has a API response and API response each of the time, and then response code and its description each of the response, and so on. You can put it every functions what you like to do, but I just started how can you do the very quickly. So how can you do this very quickly to build each of the function? You can put more descriptions, and that's help really for the end developer or web developer to understand the your API. That's the reason why it is important to provide the other developer or testing team developer or web developer or front-end developer give the really proper documentation for your REST API. Then from the REST API they can very quickly understand what they need to do, how can they call it, how can they input output parameters. Those things they can properly do it. Exactly, here the tag libraries, we put it here, the tag names, the service names, and some descriptions, and put some nothing there more there. So you can put it everything what you like to do. So the configuration annotations, and I just like defined it here how it is works, how it is done. So after the configuration connection done, and then that's I said I already discussed about how can you build the jar files and how can you deploy externally this configuration with the proper configurations. This is the already discussed. You can have a Docker files externally. That's we already discussed in here. And then how can you define all the possibility, the deployment possibility, and so on and so forth. This is all the deployment possibility. You can deploy the standalone jar file based deployment, you can deploy the Docker and Docker Compose based deployments, and also you can deploy also Docker and Kubernetes. This is the deployment that I am now talking about to deploy the application Docker and Kubernetes. That's the example that I already show you. And let's have it. Let's have a discuss a little bit more about how can do the test and how can you build the test and how can you run the applications. So then it's